Hey guys, welcome to another session of RBTL, a reading between the lines. It's been a while since I've done this, but I had some time today and I wanted to talk about this. Particularly talking about Shepherd Jenna, or the new specialty change coming. But first things first, talking about the arena season, the new one's coming up, and Guild Wars season's also ending. The Triumph frame is the first time I've taken part in a Legend Arena, which is about time. In terms of the new frame in the upcoming season, I actually don't really like the top 30 one, so maybe I aim for just the top 100 this season. I kind of like that blue and silver. I like the simplicity of the inner ring in terms of giving the silhouette like a much cleaner look instead of kind of like the wavy thing. But for those who are pushing it, obviously good luck. We'll talk about the gear as well. From my understanding, that these Arena 88s have been rolling like true 88s, except that their base stats are starting low. So you can roll, let's say for example, an 8% attack, even though it starts at 7. So that's good news overall, but the kind of alignment of the substats are kind of more odd this time. Less crit rate, crit damage, focused damage dealers, but looking at the sword, looking at the ring, it'd be more like for like a Pirate Captain Flan or something like that. And even at this point, probably good for like newer players or mid-game players. But unless you're rolling like insanely high on this, a reforged gear will still look a lot better. The helmet looks pretty nice in terms of the substat alignment, but everything else is kind of awkward. Always has that one salty stat that you don't want to roll. So for example, the health one, potentially you don't want that crit rate. And for the speed boot, you potentially don't want that ER. Not really, at least, especially it's on a speed set. Very, very low use rate compared to something, let's say, if it's the exact same main stat and substats, but on like a counter set, for example. But anyway, so that's it for that. Death Dealer Ray, I made an initial thoughts video on. My thoughts of him haven't changed, so definitely check that out. I will be, however, pulling on his Mystic Banner rotation this week, because it is coupled with the Misha artifact and also Lilibet, so potentially for my Lilibet imprints. But the Misha artifact I've always wanted multiple copies of, was waiting it for the powder shop, but you know what, if I get lucky on the mystics in terms of getting artifacts, I wouldn't mind that even if I don't get Ray. But talk about the SC change for Shepherd Jenna. As I'm making this recording just last night, people are asking who I think it was, and just to get the ball rolling in terms of something to chew on. And then after some looking, I was like, yeah, I'm pretty convinced it's Jenna. It's got the same kind of gem. It was like, it's Jenna wearing a hat. It was really clear, unless she obviously had an afro in terms of the silhouette. For those who were looking at the silhouette and trying to figure out who it was, yeah, you did a good job if you did guess Jenna. I personally am not a big fan of the design in terms of the visual design. I don't like the outfit as much. I know that it could be appealing to some others. Kind of reminds me of Celine's outfit. Maybe they have some kind of connection in the lore, but it reminds me of Celine, or Green Celine's outfit. And to talk about her, I was speculating yesterday. I was like, what would be her role? She has immunity, she has sort of a quote-unquote strip, and she has AoE defense break. I'm like, well, for her to be usable, she would probably have to have speed, right? Ta-da! Prediction came true. Increases speed by 10. So 2 separate runes that give her 5 and 5. So she gets 10. She has a base speed of 101 if I remember correctly. So 110 speed to give her speed set, and with the Frenzy currently in this season, Mage Frenzy have an additional 7 on top of the total speed. To get her to a decently usable speed for her role, as in kind of like an opener, is not too difficult. Now, if you have insane speed gear, that would like just be nuts. But I think average of a 22 speed on every piece with a speed boot and speed set will give you about 300 speed post Frenzy in World Arena. Will that give you enough? I think it might. I think her kit design is, especially the specialty change, and also they kind of redid her as 2 a bit, giving her frostbite. So at the same time giving her specialty change and slight buff, last minute buff, it is definitely a head turner. I think that she's much more usable. So in terms of the frostbite mechanic, this is the first time we've seen in this game that has a mechanic where it ignores both damage sharing and damage reduction effects. Whereas we had skills built in that, ignored damage sharing effects, but we never had like a double whammy. Now, while Frostbite is a debuff, so it has a chance of not landing, or if you don't have enough effectiveness to affect your actual target, then of course you don't get anything. So it is sort of like RNG based. She doesn't have any way to guarantee it, like in terms of soul burning, it does not give you ignore resistance, so I'm thankful for that. But it is pretty powerful if you're just considering all of the damage reduction type of heroes that are available right now. Let's say, for example, even though OQC is not really played, Archdemon Shadow is not really played as well, but we have people who have built in innate or artifacts that help with damage reduction. So Proof of Valor, Draco Plate, you know, all these types of artifacts, it does not, it will ignore it if Frostbite lands. But it does not apply to anything that has HP kind of suffering mechanics into it. So for example, Roy or Sez or Tempest Surin or ML Celine, those type of things don't get affected, but if they have it landed, the damage sharing effects won't go through, so they will still be 2-tapped. In terms of someone like Sylvan Sage Vivian, I believe that this also bypasses it. So if she has full focus, even though she's supposed to receive a 70% damage reduction, this debuff should nullify it. So even if she does have full focus, or she has enough focus to quote unquote absorb 70% or 70% damage reduction, it will cancel it out. So again, I think overall this skill in and of itself is very strong, and if you have the gear for it, it becomes very, very strong for a cleaver, because not only can you strip, technically strip the immunity, and you can grant immunity to your own team, so kind of prevents Politis from, you know, preventing you from moving potentially. And then you can have AoE defense break with the rest of her kit, AoE defense break, AoE pushback at a random amount, and it's very powerful. And if they already have Frostbite, you can also silence them for 1 turn, even though it's 30%, as you can see there in the Punishing Light preview. So all in all, I think she's very, very good. The attack for all allies by 5% is also just, you know, the cherry on top for someone who dreams of her using her to set up a cleave. Increasing of her own health, which is good. I was also thinking that potentially if you don't play cleave, you can have her built as like a pocket pick as well, because like in a standard fight, generally the rule of thumb is like, okay, I draft a knight, you draft a knight, I draft a support, you draft a support, I draft my DPS, and here's your counter pick. She could potentially be somewhat good into that as well, I think, because she has decent crowd control as well. So because she can land defense break and she can reduce any kind of damage mitigation or damage reduction, the theory behind it, I think, is that if you picked her into a standard fight, if they're not ready for it, she might be a force ban altogether, because your damage dealer, let's say for example you picked like a Milim or a Remnant Violet or even Sylvan Sage Vivian for one, and you pick them into the right slot. If they don't ban your Shepherd Jenna and your damage dealer goes through, you could still potentially one-shot your opponent, right? Because their knight would, outside of the high HP pool, their knight would have very little purpose, assuming that you land Frostbite. So I do think that Shepherd Jenna probably has more flexibility in not just cleave, but I think the way that she's built, having CR pushback for the and stun on the S1, you know, is incredible. It's just like all around really good crowd control. Outside of, I think she would just be in a standard comp, the only issue she would have, I guess, would just be a cleanser, realistically. But if you could silence the cleanser even for that 1 turn, so maybe 200 effectiveness or something like that for your Jenna, that might be the way to go. But outside of that, I do believe that people see this kit and just like, oh man, it just smells of cleave. Double turn and so much protection and being able to defense break and then also have the Frostbite debuff. I just think that we'll see, but especially in the Mage Frenzy, I think people are going to use her, and I think Smilegate designed her exactly to be that. That's why I predicted the speed that she's going to get, and she got it. And I think that Smilegate knows exactly what makes heroes work this season if they want them to work. When I say that, I'm meaning that they choose not to make certain heroes work, in my opinion. So for example, Hua Yang, Arunka, etc. I kind of skipped through the story, the side story. Oh, for this one, people who haven't done it, it is really good to do this during this week so that you can actually produce the stuff. I think that if I remember correctly, the best thing to produce is catalyst, if I remember correctly. Because in terms of amount of energy to get AP points or to get a random catalyst drop, it just costs way too much. So if you're producing catalyst, I think that's the way to go, if I remember correctly from last year. Guild War season also ending, and then we have a return banner of Ilinav and Elena. Now, I'm really liking Astromancer Elena after her buff. I really want some artifact. Oh, sorry, I want some imprints, but that's such a whale thing to be talking about right now. I am still recovering from the 4-banner Espa collab, and I'm sure most of you guys are as well. So in terms of Elena imprints, I will have to wait for elemental summons or just getting random dailies. But I will skip this one. I just cannot do it. Book of Memories also getting an update with Winter Wonderland, and I don't think I want to talk about that as well. I don't want to talk about packs either, and this is also getting refreshed, the double purchase event. I wouldn't suggest this, but if you're a whale, you wouldn't listen to me anyway. I think that's pretty much it that I wanted to cover here, mainly as an excuse to talk about SC Jenna, but it has been a long time since I've done an RBTL, so I'll end this video here. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you guys have Discord, check out the Discord server, subscribe to YouTube if you haven't, and as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.